Grieving dog puppy finds hope after
losing his mother. What happened next will blow your mind.
the streets of downtown Florida buzzed with life, a mix of rushing cars,
Honking horns and pedestrians going about their day. Among the chaos, a tiny figure limped along the edge of the road, unnoticed by most. His eyes were hollow, his movements hesitant,
and his little frame trembled with exhaustion. This was Max, a 3-month-old stray.
who had recently endured the worst tragedy of his short life.
He had lost his mother in a hit-and-run accident just days earlier. For Max, she had been his entire world, his warmth,
His safety, his guide in navigating the unforgiving streets.
Now, he was alone for days. Max wandered aimlessly, hoping in vain that she would somehow return.
Hunger gnawed at his belly.
And loneliness weighed on his fragile heart.
Most people passed him by for days.
Max wandered aimlessly,
Hoping in vain that she would somehow return. Hunger gnawed at his belly.
and loneliness weighed on his fragile heart.
Most people passed him by without a second glance, their faces too consumed by their own lives to notice the grieving puppy struggling to survive. On one particularly cold morning, Max curled up in a cardboard box near an alley, shivering as the wind whipped through the streets. His small whimpers blended into the city's noise, unheard by anyone until fate stepped in. A group of volunteers from a US animal rescue team, Hope for Paws, was conducting a street outreach program that day. The team, led by a kind-hearted woman named Sarah Thompson, had heard reports of abandoned animals struggling in the area, equipped with food, blankets, and medical supplies.
They scoured the streets in search of any creature in need. It was Sarah who first spotted
Max. She saw his tiny frame huddled inside the box, his ribs visible through his dirty fur.
The look in his eyes was what struck her most, a haunting mix of fear,
Sadness and hopelessness.
"Oh my goodness," Sarah whispered, kneeling beside the box. "Hey there, little guy."
Max flinched at her approach, his instincts telling him to run, but he was too weak to move far. Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a small piece of chicken,
The smell caught Max's attention.
and his nose twitched. Slowly, cautiously.
He crept forward and took a tentative bite.
"You're okay," Sarah said softly. With patience and kindness, Sarah and her team gained Max's trust.
She wrapped him in a warm blanket and held him close.
For the first time in days, Max felt a glimmer of safety.
The rescue team transported Max to their shelter. At first,
Max was overwhelmed by the unfamiliar sights and sounds.
returning to the spot where his mother had died.
Returning to the spot where his mother had died. We're here to help.
A warm and bustling space filled with other rescued animals.
At first, Max was overwhelmed by the unfamiliar sights and sounds,
He stayed in the corner of his crate.
his tiny body trembling, still mourning the loss of his mother.
But Sarah refused to give up on him,
She visited him every day.
bringing him treats and sitting by his side.
She gave him a soft toy, a small stuffed bear that he began to carry everywhere. It reminded him of the comfort he once felt with his mother.
Days turned into weeks, and Max slowly began to heal. He started eating regularly,
His coat grew shinier.
and the sadness in his eyes began to fade. One day, to Sarah's delight,
Max wagged his tail for the first time. As Max grew stronger, he also grew curious,
he began exploring the shelter.
making friends with the other animals.
One day, during playtime in the yard,
Max did something extraordinary. A small kitten, barely older than Max had been when he lost his mother, was brought into the shelter.
the kitten was weak and scared, just as Max had once been.
To everyone's surprise,
Max immediately went to the kitten and lay down beside her,
nuzzling her gently. It was as if he understood her pain.
and wanted to comfort her the way Sarah had comforted him. From that day on, Max became the shelter's unofficial greeter and caretaker. Every new rescue was met with his wagging tail and warm presence. He had transformed from a grieving puppy into a symbol of hope and resilience.
One afternoon, as Max played with his stuffed bear in the yard, a family arrived at the shelter. They were the Bakers, a couple, and their young daughter, Emma.
Who had been searching for a dog to complete their family. When Emma saw Max, she ran to him,
Her laughter filling the air. Max froze for a moment, unsure. But when Emma knelt down and held out her hand, he sniffed it and gave her a gentle lick. It was love at first sight.
Sarah watched with tears in her eyes as the Bakers adopted Max. She knew he had found a perfect home.
Max's new life was everything he could have dreamed of.
The Bakers lived in a cozy house with a big backyard where he could run and play. Emma became his best friend, and the two were inseparable.
But Max never forgot his past, the lessons he learned on the streets, the pain of loss.
The power of kindness stayed with him.
He carried that same spirit of hope and healing wherever he went. Years later,
The Bakers returned to the shelter with Max. They wanted to adopt another rescue animal.
knowing that their family wouldn't be complete without giving another creature the chance to find love.
Max
Now a strong and confident dog,
wagged his tail as he greeted the animals, just as he once had been greeted.
Max's story spread far and wide, inspiring people to support animal rescues and treat
All creatures with compassion. The shelter even started a program in his name, Max's Hope, dedicated to helping grieving and abandoned animals find homes. For Sarah, seeing Max thrive was the greatest reward.
She often said, Max taught us something incredible. Even in the darkest moments, there's always hope. And sometimes, the ones who need love the most are the ones who give the most in return.
And so, the grieving puppy who once roamed the streets of
Florida became a beacon of hope, a reminder that love, kindness,
and second chances can transform even the saddest of stories into something truly extraordinary.